Karilikun, Dobry Den, good afternoon. My name is Bridget Goodman. I am currently assistant professor and director of the MA in Multilingual Education program, although if my promotion comes through in fall when you come, I will be associate professor. I have the unique opportunity here that I don't usually have in such seminars. Because I have the list of participants, I can actually greet you individually by names. So hello Sadirbek, hello Saule, hello Dorogaya Sel, my akademichskaya dochka, hello Aiganim, hello Altangul, hello Aidana Sirgabayeva, the most important person on here because she is the manager of academic activities. Hello Aigarim, hello Adil, hello Murat Khan, hello Moldir, hello GK, hello Saida, hello Angela, hello Tolimbet, hello Aliyah, hello Sandugash, hello Shamil, hello Ojas, hello Dema, and hello Raigul. As you can see, I'm sitting here in my apartment on campus in Nur Sultan with the Tian Shan Mountains of Almaty behind me. And if I hold my arms out, then I can touch center, south, east, west, north. If I wave my hands like this, I can reach the regions and the villages. Why am I saying that? Because as Asel knows, I have a great sense of humor, but more importantly, I hope that I'm meeting people today from across Kazakhstan and that we're including people today from across Kazakhstan. I need to move this aside. So the plan for today, and my hope is that I will only talk for about 20 minutes and leave the remainder of the hour for questions from you, is first, I want to introduce multilingual Kazakhstan. And again, I might be, as we say in English, preaching to the choir. I might be explaining something that you already know, but I want to do this to again, because the title of the talk is to think of multilingual education in ways that go beyond simply trilingual education policy. Although that is a very important topic, there are many ways that we can talk about multilingual education in Kazakhstan. And that includes looking at multilingualism in Kazakhstan, looking at language policy and language in education policy and the ways we talk about it in our classes, introducing the notion of individual multilingualism and how that's being defined in the field and in Kazakhstan by myself and a recent graduate of our MA program. And then I want to do a self-check to see whether you are ready to study these and other issues in the MA in Multilingual Education program here at NUGSE. So I have some questions you can ask yourself that help you decide whether this program is going to be a good fit for you. Does that make sense so far? К сожалению, я казахское говорю, но если вам нужно, что я подтверждать и повторить по чуть-чуть на русском, я стараюсь. Но в принципе, Айдана мне сказала, что вы уже узнали, что семинар будет происходить на английском. All right. So, when we're talking about multilingualism in Kazakhstan, this is a map from Ethnologue. I think many of you have probably heard the discourse that Kazakhstan is a nation of 130 nationalities or ethnic groups that live in peace and harmony. And these ethnic groups also speak different languages. This map shows not only different languages that are indigenous to Kazakhstan, but shows that they are from at least 3 different language families, Indo-European, Sino-Tibetan, and Turkic, and within that there are variations. So Dungan and Kazakh and Uyghur are all Turkic, but they do have some variation both in language and script and culture. And again, these are just the languages that are indigenous. There are other languages that have migrated here: Ukrainian, German, Korean, and not just the languages have migrated, their speakers have migrated here. So when we're thinking about multilingual education in Kazakhstan, we can think about all of these groups of people and all of these languages, not only Kazakh, Russian, and English. Again, we have an assembly of people that helps support language learning in these ethnic groups, and we therefore have citizens who sometimes know not only 3 languages, but 4 if they speak a language at home other than English, or we can have citizens who know 5 languages if those individuals have learned 2 foreign languages, or we might have some philologists online who studied English and Chinese, or English and Korean, or English and German. In fact, I have a second-year student right now who's been very active in teaching and learning German in addition to English and Kazakh and Russian. And there are even schools, mostly in the South, that use the mother tongue as the language of instruction. So Uyghur, Tajik, German, Ukrainian, I forget some of the others, but there are schools that are even teaching in those mother tongues. Now, when we think of multilingualism and multiculturalism, it's easy to think about, well, number one, heritage language schools, but also the traditional costumes, the traditional foods. And this slide here is an example of the Ukrainian heritage school that's located here in Kazakhstan. I believe it's in Astana. But I forgot to double check. But it's interesting, the students are wearing traditional Ukrainian clothes. They're probably singing traditional Ukrainian songs. You can start to see at the back, you know, some signs on bookshelves that are in Ukrainian, but then the sign at the top appears to refer to Nowruz. So there's kind of a blend even there of Ukrainian and Kazakh cultures, which I find interesting. But what I consider to be more important is the ways that our master's students are able to go beyond the flag and costume. And I've put examples here, and there are links in the slide, but I can share with you later a link to our library repository where you can find these theses in English with abstracts in 3 languages and read for yourself. Kamila Kozhabayeva wrote her thesis about heritage language and culture maintenance in an Armenian ethnic culture center. And she found there are a number of activities that the center does, but that turnout tends to be low. We had another student based on this work, Sapar Kwanashuli, who did similar research in the German Cultural Center in a region of Kazakhstan, and found students were motivated to learn the language primarily so they could migrate to Germany. So even within these cultural centers, there are variations in students' participation, students' motivation, in terms of policy supports, etc. Juldis Toktau, who also graduated in 2017, did a very interesting study, and another student after her, Arya Seydin, also looked at the issue of Oralman, of ethnic Kazakhs who were born and raised in China and who at some point in their lives have come back to Kazakhstan to be part of Kazakhstani education and society. Juldis was looking at students who go through secondary education in China and then get scholarships, special scholarships for Oralmani, or self-fund to come to Kazakhstan for higher education, for bachelor's and master's degrees. And she looked at their language use, their identity, and their integration. And what she found is that many students are migrating from China because they're afraid of losing their Kazakh language, because the policies there are not helping, in schools are not helping students maintain Kazakh language, but are rather forcing them to learn Chinese, Mandarin, and integrate into the Han majority culture. She also said students feel Kazakh, but not Kazakhstani. Even though Kazakhstani is usually an inclusive term, they feel themselves ethnically Kazakh. But most important is, particularly for students in Astana, they feel challenged to integrate into Kazakh society because they don't know Russian, right? They don't learn Russian in China. And so they don't have that shared language background with students here. And there were important implications for the need to help students to learn Russian, and other implications for how we can help Oromani integrate into Kazakhstani society. And then finally, Dilnoza looked at Uzbek minority students' experiences in majority higher education. So again, from the point of view of language maintenance and minority culture support, being able to study in elementary and secondary school in a foreign language, in a mother tongue, is a great advantage and a great opportunity. But then the problem is that students who want to go to higher education have to choose Kazakh or Russian as a medium of instruction. And so she talked about the challenges students face to prepare themselves to rationalize this choice, because there were advantages and disadvantages both to Kazakh and to Russian, and to other challenges they faced, but that they persisted through these challenges because they felt a very strong responsibility to their family and to their peers to succeed. Very interesting study. Coming back to trilingual education, Nazarbayev says, and you've probably heard this quote before, that we need 3 languages. I should say has said, Kazakh as the state language, Russian as a language of international communication, and English as the language of integration into the global economy, which has led to the development of a number of policies that are being implemented in different phases, but basically of teaching different subjects in one of these 3 languages in at least some schools in the country, particularly the teaching of certain science and technology subjects in English, of teaching history of Kazakh and geography in Kazakh, and teaching world literature and perhaps law in the Russian language, excuse me. And from a global perspective, from an international perspective, I have 2 comments on that I always talk about the first semester, is that especially in the Kazakh context, where you have such a strong, what I would call a top-down approach to policy making, right? The government says this is what we're doing, and then the government instructs leaders of akimats, of regions, and they instruct, school districts and principals, and they instruct teachers, and they say, you will do this, and you have no choice. But what Rosento and Hornberger have been saying for 20 years, and other scholars have been adding and modifying this work slightly, is that, what we traditionally think of as language policy as coming from perhaps national legislatures or nation states themselves, or even supranational agencies. So in Soviet times, the Soviet Rada was a supranational. It governed the policies of the Kazakh Soviet Socialist Republic, of the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. Now we could argue the European Union is a supranational agency which governs practices in the EU member nations, but also even guides to some extent higher education in places like Kazakhstan through policies such as the Bologna process. But again, these are only 2 layers of what my advisor Nancy Hornberger calls the onion. The other layers are institutions. So Nazarbayev University, as an autonomous institution, has 2 official policies. One official policy is to have English as the language of instruction, except for certain languages, and to require and to require certain documents to be produced, or certain communications to be produced in 3 languages, English, Kazakh, and Russian, for official purposes. right? And that's an institutional policy here. Other higher education institutions in Kazakhstan may have a different approach. They may be entirely Kazakh or entirely Russian, or have 2 media of instruction, or 3 or 4 even. But the other important thing is that classroom practitioners, right? Teachers, teaching assistants, school administrators, right? But particularly teachers are at the heart of the onion. So perhaps the official language policy says we can only teach in English. But as a representative of the field of multilingual education, меня очень важно, поделить и подтвердить возможность обсуждать на любом языке, на русском, казахша, немецкий, whatever, makes the students, your identity feel valued, your communicative repertoire is recognized, and to acknowledge that in being inclusive of languages in the classroom, without excluding those who don't share our language repertoires, actually facilitates and promotes learning. But classroom practitioners can also be stricter than the official policy and decide to close down those spaces. So as powerful as governments are in setting policy and guidelines, classroom practitioners have a lot of power as well. And last year when I did this presentation, one participant even volunteered that there's another circle that needs to be added of parents, because parents can make choices about how students get education and what languages students get education, what kind of support they provide to get education, and can complain if they think teachers are not using enough of the language that they think is important. All right, moving on. The other concept I like to talk about is what we call in the field medium of instruction, policy, and practice. And this is one of the few terms in the field that I know how to explain, I guess now in 4 languages, English, Russian, Kazakh, and Ukrainian. I'll only share with you the Russian and Kazakh today. So medium is the language in which academic subjects are taught. So math, science, humanities, and literature. So when I say English as a medium of instruction, это преподавание на английском языке or английском языке, right? And to me, that's different from teaching a subject as a foreign language, although sometimes those classes are also taught in the target language. But choosing to teach science in English gives a particular weight, a particular prestige to that language, and has, to me, more challenging implications for teachers and students of learning both the content and the subject. My colleague Xabier, if he were here, being the expert in content and language integrated learning, Xabier San Isidro, would probably, argue back at me that Bridget, actually asking students to learn content and language can motivate them, and if it's done well and designed well, it can actually build students' content and language, because people interested in engineering, don't care about grammar rules. But if they want to build a car and they need English to build that car and to explain what they've built, then they are more motivated. But in many cases, it's an arena in which political conflicts among countries and among different ethno-linguistic groups are realized. So part of the challenge of trilingual education in Kazakhstan is figuring out who benefits and who loses. Is it ethnic Kazakhs who lose because Kazakh loses priority to English? Is it ethnic Russians who lose because they're forced to learn Kazakh? Is it everyone who loses because students are no longer polylingual, no polylingual, no polulingual, they're not multilingual, they're semilingual? These are the questions. And then my research direction is to argue that when we talk about medium of instruction, I think we talk about it in ways that are too limiting, that are too static. We assume that when we say teaching in English, that means teaching only in English all the time. But when we're making these choices in contexts where people naturally mix and move among languages and have multiple languages activated in their head at one time, right? Right now I'm speaking in English, but you might be hearing my English and thinking at the same time in Kazakh or in Russian or a combination. Or going, oh, Bridget said a word that sounds like an Italian or Turkish word I know, right? And so based on my observation of courses in Ukraine, where I spent a year doing research in higher education, and based on my students' own thesis work around this topic, medium of instruction does not mean one language only all the time. And I would argue it shouldn't mean that when we're doing this in contexts where students are naturally and necessarily, according to the policy, needing to be developing multilingual schools or multilingual competence. And that leads to the last point. So Cedric Bolson Tustenbeck is a 2019 graduate of our MA program. And his final paper for my class was a literature review on translanguaging that had so many new articles I hadn't read in it yet that I asked him to contribute to a paper that I was writing about code switching and translanguaging. And he ended up not only helping with the literature review, but helping me understand the concept better. We ended up doing something more autobiographical in the paper, and it just got published last month in TESOL Quarterly, which is the journal of the International TESOL Association. I don't promise this opportunity or this outcome for every student in our program. This is the first time it's happened, but I know that many of our students have written master's theses and gone on to work as research assistants on research projects where there are potential future opportunities for publication in international journals. In fact, another graduate, Leila Abdamanapova, and I just got a paper accepted to the Asian EFL journal, which is a lower ranked journal, but was interested in our topic on EFL teachers' perspectives on trilingual education policy and education reform. But I digress as usual. Coming back to the topic of translanguaging, what we show in our paper based on our review of the literature and our own experiences with research and reading on this topic is that translanguaging is about alternation between languages, right? 1 minute I'm speaking English, и второй момент я говорю на русском. It's mixing, it's your shala chazak. It's hybridity or fusion of named languages, which again is all of your shala chazak practices in and out of class. And it can be spontaneous, but it can also be purposefully pedagogical. People can make choices based on this, but it depends on whether teachers and students' beliefs and practices are hegemonic, whether they believe, whether they say, well, you know, they need to know English, therefore I need to teach English only. Or our principal says we're not allowed to mix languages in class, and that's the way it is. Or whether, like me, they are resistant to such policies, or whether they're transformative, whether they decide from the beginning that they are going to plan to incorporate all of the translanguaging pedagogies that are being written about in the literature into their teaching practice. So my friend May French in Australia, for example, has given examples of writing a recipe where students can use words from different languages to describe a recipe in their native culture. Or where they interview a family member to get a folk tale, a skazka from their parents or grandparents, and maybe they listen to the tale in the mother tongue, but they write about it in English or a combination, they go back and forth, right? Those are some transformative practices. But more importantly, the reason that scholars are advocating and that Sarek is advocating for translanguaging, that I'm advocating for it in classrooms, is because it takes a holistic view of languages. It asserts that, again, languages exist in our mind as one system, right? Kazakh, Russian, English, whatever other named languages are in your head, your brain, when you're speaking, does not separate these languages out. It's society that says we have to keep these languages separate. And it's heteroglossic. As Garcia says, the boundaries between these languages are not clear. They overlap, they intersect. And a lot of this is based on students' personal reactions or feelings. When I teach this, our students go, yes, of course, this is how it is for us. This is exactly how it is for us. When you explain it to European monolingual white English teachers like me, we can't see it, we can't understand it, because we only see the outside separation. But having these transformative practices in these spaces where students can perform all of the languages in their repertoire helps them learn the subject better, and again, helps with their own identity formation. And sorry that last letter got too small, but helps you to embrace who you are. If I say when you come into my classroom, okay, this is an English only zone, leave all of your other languages at the door, it's like asking you to be in the classroom with one hand tied behind your back, or as Elena Shohami says, with one eye covered, right? It's not, you're denying a part of who you are. Okay, I have said way too much about that. But thank you for listening. So now what I want to do is to say that I'm telling you all of these things both because I want to open your minds and open your hearts to all of the ways that you can think, to some of the ways. This isn't even all of it. This is just a glimpse of the ways that we think and talk about multilingual education in the world and at NUGSE. And because, we hope after listening to this talk that you will be more motivated to apply and to join us inshallah, in fall 2020. But some of you may at this point be fearful and asking yourselves, what can I do? How can I possibly enroll in your program? How can I possibly be ready to produce a master's thesis or an international article like your students have? So my answer to that is the quote from William Shakespeare, "To thy known self be true." So I have some guided questions for you. These are rhetorical questions. Please do not write your answers in the text box or in the participant email, but you are welcome to ask for clarifications based on your personal situation or on other factors I may not have included here. So first of all, are you fluent in 3 languages, Kazakh, Russian, and English? Of course, that's definitely a bonus. It will help you collect data, it will help you analyze, it will help you do certain activities in those 3 languages. But maybe you're good in English and Russian, and your Kazakh language skills are weak. We do not have a language requirement for Kazakh. In fact, what we do is we have a Kazakh language course, and the instructor offers a placement test, and based on your level, you take your Kazakh language class with people at the same level. Interesting, what we're finding is that more recent students to our program do not need the basic Kazakh. But if you're just intermediate or if you're highly proficient, we can work with you, no problem. Maybe your mother tongue is not Russian or Kazakh. Maybe it's Korean, maybe it's Uzbek. Maybe you're an international student and your mother tongue is Polish. We definitely want you. This is a bonus, again, because you represent a part of multilingual Kazakhstan and of international experience that isn't often reflected in analysis and interpretation of policy for education. If you speak more than 3 languages, definitely apply. We're always happy to have people who are themselves multilingual. You're a fresh graduate from a philology or closely related program, or you're going to finish, inshallah, in 2020. But I already have a record of research and leadership. I'm excited and ready to study. I will tell you, we tend to give preference to students who have some work experience, but we end up taking in a lot of fresh graduates because they have a strong background in languages and language learning, and because they show this potential for research and for leadership and for diving in and doing the work it takes to complete our program. At the same time, we get students who have earned their degree in another field, right? If you got your degree in economics or international relations or computer science, we're going to look at that sideways. But if you have some relevant work experience, maybe you're working in education as a manager. We have a student who got in this year who was working at Orleo, right? The big training association. So she's on the ground at the center of one of the most important sites of development of good practice for multilingual education. We have students who get degrees in computer science, and they've been teaching computer science in English at a secondary school. So your background is a little bit different in terms of your education, but your work experience is very relevant to multilingual education. And you'll be able to draw on that experience very well to understand the literature, to develop a thesis topic, and so on. Okay. And last, I am from the blank part of Kazakhstan or the blank part of the world. Many students think, oh, students from Nur Sultan or students from Almaty have an advantage. And again, there are a number of reasons why those advantages exist. Some of that is just the structure of Kazakhstani society. But again, we definitely encourage and want to encourage enrollment of students from different regions. We tend to get a lot from Pavlodar and Semey and Kizlorda and Shymkent. We'd like to see more representation from the West. We get excited if we can get a strong candidate who's from a village. The caution I would say there is some of those students from regions or from village backgrounds at times, and again, this is just my anecdotal observation. I have not collected rigorous data on this, but occasionally some of those students feel overwhelmed being in Nur Sultan, being surrounded by people who are city folk, for lack of a better word. But again, we have ways to help you support that. So in plain English, if you answered yes to one or more of any of these questions, do not delay, start your application today. And Aidana can explain when the deadline is for that, but we encourage you to apply. Now, I have some other statements here. I just want a Nazarbayev University diploma. I don't care what field it's in. And usually we see this in the application when they say, oh, Nazarbayev is the best university ever, it has the best professors, and they're applying to our program and political science and international relations and engineering. Or again, even within multilingual education, if you say I'm interested in everything and anything. Again, this is a master's degree, not a jack of all trades degree. You want to show that you have a little bit of focus. People who say, I want you to train me to be an English teacher. No, we are not a teacher training program. We are first and foremost a research and leadership program. We offer courses on pedagogy because we think it's important for you to be aware of good pedagogical practices that come from previous research, and because many of our students do go on to teach languages or subjects at different levels of education. But we don't have a teaching practicum. We are not focused on teacher training exclusively. I want to study foreign languages and literature. Now we have clubs on campus from our undergraduate programs for Spanish, for Korean, possibly for German, I think for French as well. So if you have time, you can get involved in extracurricular activities, but we are not a philology program. We are an education program. So if you're looking to analyze, the use of certain particles in Kazakh or the use of post prepositions in Korean, this is not the program for you. And the worst, if you say, I have a friend or a company, you wouldn't say this out loud, but if you're thinking to yourself, oh, I have a friend or a company who will write my application for me. First of all, we look very carefully. If you have an IELTS score of 5 or 6 on writing and you have an essay that looks like a 9, that's a red flag for us. That tells us that perhaps you didn't write your application. And more importantly, even if you succeed, even if you fool us and we go, okay, we're going to let you in, once you get here and have to do the work on your own, you will drown. You will drown. Because if you cannot do the work yourself, it will be very challenging for you and for your teachers. So if any of these statements apply to you, please keep calm and stay home. All right? Okay. So that's all I have to say. So again, thank you. Spasiba, tashekaredram, grazie, danke. And now I will try to end the screen presentation, and I will ask Aidana to help me figure out how we're going to manage the Q&A.
So thank you very much, Bridget. Dear participants of today's session, you're welcome to ask the question, to raise hand, ask it in person, or some of the participants actually did write their questions already in the chat.
Okay.
Can you see the chat, Bridget?
I can.
There's a question from Asim Gul.
Asim Gul. Okay, what if I worked unofficially? I can't prove that I've worked these years as a teacher of English. Aidana, can you answer that question?
Yeah, sure. So we require 1 or 2 years of work experience to be eligible as a candidate for master's or PhD program. But there is some actually cases when the student didn't work or worked unofficially, like in this case, but he or she has, like strong motivations to apply to be a candidate for the program, and all other cases like she or he did a project and can actually present what was a result of the work she did or he did in the past. And I mean, this is all into the consideration of the admissions committee.
Okay, thank you, Aidana. And then the second question is, what can I work as after I get the diploma? I mean, first of all, I want to say we started the program in 2014. And so we're still developing and collecting data on the opportunities students have. And I'll probably ask Aidana and even Asel to chime in on this, but it seems that a good portion of students do go into the field of teaching. Some of them work as managers in educational settings. Some of them end up working at NUGSE itself as program managers. So Aidana is an example of this. She's a 2013 graduate of the MSc program. The previous Dean Secretary, Vice Dean Secretary, was a graduate of the MA program. And another portion, and I'm working my way up, another portion get hired as research assistants, either by NUGSE or by other, by NUGSE faculty or by faculty in other departments. Or I think one student got a job with the Dara Foundation or with the World Bank doing research. And then there's a smaller group of students that tries to go on for an additional master's degree abroad through Erasmus. And we're just starting to get, we've had one student accepted to a PhD program in New Zealand. With the quarantine, I don't know if she's been actually able to travel to New Zealand to start the program, but she has been accepted. We have another student who's been accepted to a PhD program in Denmark and is trying to finalize the scholarship funding for that. And honestly, this is our ultimate goal, is to have students to leave our programs positioned to enter PhD programs abroad, to get degrees, and to come back and take my job so that I can retire. But there is a continuum there. And then there are other students who get into alternate fields. I know one student has been working as a translator. You know, a lot of it depends on the market and the economy. So thank you. Angela, you said you had a comment?
Yeah, Angela would like to ask a question, please.
Yes, hello everyone. Здравствуйте, Salimitsby. Bonjour, annyeonghaseyo, ciao. This is some maybe more languages that I came through more or less successfully. Okay, so thank you, Miss Bridget. Thank you very much for your introduction to the master program. I've just got a comment and I wanted to know maybe your professional view. As you know, the secondary education just recently came through some kind of big shift from a previous program to a new one. Mm-hmm. And the main idea was to set the program on English language as a medium, the language of medium instruction.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. So, so the children in high school could learn some of the subjects in English, so that some of the maybe schools, or you know, to give such a chance to study subjects in English. And I wanted to know your just professional point of view. What do you think about this shift? Thank you.
Okay. I'll give my point of view, and then I'll give the point of view of EFL teachers from the article. My personal feeling is it's not necessarily a bad thing, and it's not necessarily a good thing. I think it depends on the preparation of teachers to teach in this mode, and that's where I have the concern. My concern is in the implementation. My concern is in whether teachers are linguistically ready for this, and whether they are pedagogically ready for this shift. Because at least what I see in higher education, and I think our students who do master's thesis research on this are finding, is that teachers get a lot of help in improving their English, right? Their four
Right.
skills, but they don't get taught how to teach in a language that is not students' mother tongue or other mother tongue Russian. They just assume that the teaching should not be any different, and then they're surprised and frustrated when it doesn't work. And so I think more has to be done to achieve these goals. My other concern, and this is where a lot of I didn't talk about my current research project, but I got a grant to look at, again, higher education, where schools are teaching in 3 languages, is if we are teaching these science subjects in English, yes, students then get access to the language of knowledge and to the knowledge itself that is produced in English. But then what happens to Russian and Kazakh? Are you able to maintain development in those 3 languages? Are you able to communicate these concepts about photosynthesis in Kazakh and Russian as well? Is there a need for that? Or is it enough, as one teacher said, to be able to drink tea in Kazakh and read literature in Russian and write a research article in English. So you'll see that some of my answers come from my concern and my understanding of the field, but also, you know, to me, what's more important is what do Kazakhs think about this? What do the different stakeholders involved in this think about this? And how can I help those stakeholders to push back against these policies or to implement them in a more rationalized way? And again, to be honest, for that second part, I rely more on my students and alumni to go into the world armed with the knowledge that we give them, to band together and have those conversations. Okay, sorry, that was a very long answer, but.
No, thank you. So it means that theoretically it could be okay, so good,
Yeah.
but from practical part of view, so it doesn't work because of the methodology. So because of the effective methods or some CLIL and etc.
It doesn't work at this stage, but but it could work. It could work.
So, but you support, like, theoretically you agree with this, some kind of decision.
Yeah.
But from the practical part of view, it doesn't work. Okay.
It doesn't work at this time. I don't, you know, part of being an academic is not making blatant statements saying it doesn't work, because there are places where it might be working. I mean, clearly something must be working because students somehow are learning English to get into our programs. And some of them are graduates of schools like NIS, where they did have the opportunity.
And they're really interested in that.
Or KTL, right? I would say KTL is a successful model, but that's also, you know, education where students are selected, right? You know, based on giftedness, so, and aptitude for languages.
That's different.
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, let's see what other questions. Добрый день, спасибо. Можно короткие комментарии на русском языке? Спасибо, да, конечно. Кто-то нарисовал на экране неизвестно. Жанцы, вы можете выключить. I don't understand the question. This looks like a technical question. Yes, Aidana?
Yeah, I guess it was the comment during the presentation.
Okay. Ah, yeah.
So the last question was about the psychology. Let's wait if participant has another questions.
Okay.
Oh yeah, there's a question from Alia.
Can social organizations participate in your programs? Do you have any inclusive education activities or program? Okay, so what do you mean by participate, Aliyah? I mean, because I mean, we have, number one, we have a whole separate program just on inclusive education if you want to study that formally as a master's degree. But also we have social organizations on campus that our students can participate in. So we have, for example, although maybe it's more faculty, there's the Cold Hands, Warm Heart project, where students and faculty raise money to buy winter clothes for people. I keep getting announcements looking for people to apply for a grant to do a social project in Kazakhstan related to the current crisis. We have a number of students who get involved and organize volunteer activities. So, you know, we haven't, at least in the multilingual education program, I would say we've been less successful at this point in bringing outside social organizations in to campus. But it doesn't mean it couldn't happen in the future. But again, it depends on you. I would say there are spaces to do this, but usually what happens is students come to me with this idea. I say, yeah, do it, I'll support you. And then the end of term assignments come due and everything pauses. What books or articles should we read to get a concept of multilingual education? That's a really good question. I mean, I know the books that we use, whether they're available to you, are a different story. But Okay, so for children with disabilities, again, I can't remember if it's MA or if it's someone else in NU that was trying to organize language lessons for children with special needs. Certainly, if you yourself as an applicant have a disability or a special need, we are open to working with that. In fact, we have an MSc graduate who came to us who is blind, who now works in our library. So there's that opportunity. But coming back to books or articles, well, of course, if you can get a copy of my article with Sarah Bolson, but you know, I have to ask you to acquire it legally. I don't know if it's available illegally. The Esther de Jong book and the Colin Baker and Wright books, they've written books that give a broad overview of multilingual education or of bilingual education and bilingualism. To me, those two authors, if you can get access, are key. There's also, you can look online, there was a center in Birmingham called Mosaic, which might have links to other resources. And our full professor, Makul Saxena, who was there, he has also shared links online to Coursera or other online courses on multilingual education that are available now. But no one expects you to do any reading before you arrive, but it might help you write your application statement, and it might help you in an interview if we ask you about your thesis topic. Thank you, Sandugash. And I keep reading that as R. I know that that's my translanguaging. That's my contact zone, right? I see a G and I see an R at the same time. Thank you, Sandugash, for your kind words. From Kyrgyzstan. Rakhmat for joining us. We actually have an associate professor, Dushan Shamatov, who's here from Kyrgyzstan as well. He would be so happy to have a representative from his country enrolling in our programs. So,
yes, I'm also from Kazakhstan, and I am very grateful for your presentation. I heard about your webinar from Facebook. It was very interesting and useful for me. Thanks very much.
Thank you for that feedback, Janat. Oh, no, that's not Janat. Who said that? That is Janat. Okay, you're online twice. Thank you, Janat.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Do we have to include thesis topic and motivational letter? No, you don't. Adana, do you remember offhand the questions that are included in the application? If not, I can look them up.
Not really. So usually within the motivation letter, which is very short, we expect like 1 or 2 pages, right? We don't expect actually any of the topics, probably 1 or 2 sentences, but it's not required that the student needs to write like research proposal to enter master's degree program.
But as a webinar special, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Well, first of all, when you submit your application, we read the applications and then we decide whether we're going to interview. And at the stage of interview, we often ask students what your thesis topic might be. And we do that both to see if you have any content knowledge at that point, but also to see if you seem to have a general direction or understanding of the issues in multilingual education here in Kazakhstan or in Kyrgyzstan that you might want to investigate. We don't expect you to have a full proposal. That happens for the PhD applications, but some sign that you have the capacity to think about these issues and to talk about these issues in a clear and targeted and focused way. what would I better write in my essay to enter the NU Master Program? So again, we don't have a template, but let me see if I can find an example of an application so that I can at least tell you what the questions are and comment a bit. I should also say I'm chair of the admissions committee. Sorry about that. I specifically turned on Do Not Disturb because I'm supposed to have a research meeting at 4 o'clock. Wait. Okay, so in the essay, you're asked to write about how your previous personal educational and professional experience have prepared you for multilingual education. And this is, again, very important. We get candidates who submit applications to school leadership and multilingual education, or multilingual education and political science, and I read it and go, well, this looks more like political science, or this looks more like education reform. You know, where's the mention of the language issues? And also your personal preparation. And this is where you have an opportunity to explain some things that look unclear. So for example, we had a student who had a law degree. And of course, our thought is, why is a lawyer applying to multilingual education? And she said, well, I applied to law school because my parents told me to, but I've always wanted to work as a teacher, and I've always been interested in languages. She eventually got into the program because she could use the essay to narrate her experience. Other students have had very specific work experience that positions them, as I said, to be in our program. Please describe your professional plans for the next 5 years. Think about potential places of employment and positions. So again, it's hard to predict in this crazy world, but you want, many times students write this in a way that's not specific, right? They say, oh, I want to have a bright future. I want to work as a specialist in the sphere of multilingual education. Well, that doesn't tell us, you know, where you're going with it. As one person said, if you don't know where you're going, you won't get there. So we need to see that you have, you know, some idea of where you're trying to go with this program, and particularly show your potential to be a leader, right? So again, saying I want to be a teacher, yes, sometimes teachers are leaders. But we might be looking for people who at least want to train other teachers in what they've learned, or who are interested in PhD or interested in other management or leadership positions in the country. And then please describe issues in Kazakhstan which you think are most urgent and need to be addressed by policymakers. And again, you want to think about this with specific regards to multilingual education. You heard about the curriculum reform, the updated curriculum, and you heard Angela, sorry, was it Angela or Asamgul? I'm already forgetting. But you heard a previous speaker talk about the link between the updated curriculum and teaching in English, right? That's what makes it a multilingual education issue. It's one language that's within a context where at least 3 languages are expected. If you only talk about curriculum reform, or only talk about leadership, you're not connecting to issues of multilingual education. And I know I went through that very quickly, but I think if you go into the link that hopefully Aidana will share with you and look at the application online, you will see these questions repeated in the application, because that's where I just took those questions from, was from an application that was submitted by a student. All right. I think we have time for one more question and then I need to wrap it up.
There was a question about sharing your presentation.
Okay. Again, I have to rely on Aidana to ask. I'm happy to share it, at least as a PDF file. Aidana, what's the best way to do this?
Yeah, you can send me the presentation in PDF. Anyways, I will be sharing the record link of today's session with those who have registered. So I can send it along.
Okay. Excellent. All right then. If there are no more questions, I wish you good luck. Yeah, if there are any more questions, and I'll type my email address here as well.